Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala.
I'm Kai Jackson. City State's Attorney Ivan Bates is one of many people frustrated with lawmakers in Annapolis as the bill he's backing that would allow for tougher sentences for some gun offenders is stalling.
Lawmakers facing criticism for what some are calling their soft-on-crime approach as the gun violence rages on in Baltimore City and beyond. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost and Maxine Stryker are pressing lawmakers about what they're doing to address the crime and if it's enough.
Our team coverage begins with Keith Daniels. He joins us with a live look at the state of crime in Baltimore. Keith?
Well, Kai and Mary, more and more, we're seeing juveniles involved in this continued gun violence, whether they are victims or suspects. And tonight, police are asking for the public's help to find yet another young offender. The search is on, looking for the suspect in the shooting death of 16-year-old Isaiah Carter. The boy gunned down in a park near Patterson High School where he was a student. It happened 1 week ago Monday. Tonight, still no arrest. Baltimore police saying only the investigation is ongoing. Carter is the 6th Baltimore City school student to be shot and killed this year. 15-year-old LaRon Henderson, a 9th grader at Forest Park High School, murdered in January. Police recently tweeted this alert from Metro Crime Stoppers, an $8,000 cash reward for information that leads to an arrest and conviction in that case.
It really does feel like a loss. Like a real loss.
At Forno Italian restaurant in downtown Baltimore,
it's been tough.
The shock over Carter's death still apparent.
Everyone's really crushed.
Carter worked there, washed dishes. At a fundraiser for his family last week, friends and coworkers called the teen shy and well-mannered.
Starting to come out of his shell a lot recently. Do his homework in downtime, and just everything about him was just really positive and pleasant.
The two students are among the 51 homicides in Baltimore so far this year. 93 other people have been shot but survived. At the time of Carter's fatal shooting, Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison stepped to the mic with a plea.
Yet again, we're talking about young people using guns against other young people. And so it has to stop, but it only stops when people who know what happened, people who were here, step forward to let us know.
Well, if you have any information about these shootings, you're urged to call Metro Crime Stoppers. Remember, you can remain anonymous and could be eligible for a reward. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Baltimore City isn't the only place seeing gun crime. Towson has also seen a number of shootings this year, including one last month that killed 17-year-old Baltimore City school student Trayshawn Harmon. In Annapolis, Fox 45 News has heard a few examples of teenagers found with guns this year. In January, an 18-year-old was shot and killed along Newtown Drive.
And the clock is ticking for lawmakers in Annapolis to pass legislation to address the crime crisis. There's less than a month left in this year's legislative session. And now questions surround the bill Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates is pushing. The legislation would raise the maximum penalty for first-time offenders from 3 years to 5 across the board. Supporters say the bill is necessary because a convicted person only has to serve 25% of a jail sentence in most cases. Under current law, that could mean less than a year. After one hearing, the legislation seems to be stalling. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost demanding answers tonight.
After seemingly stalling for weeks, the Senate Rules Committee Tuesday afternoon moving this legislation forward, sending it to another committee for potentially even more debate. But if there is actually a plan forward for this legislation, it still remains unclear. Each minute that passes, the closer lawmakers get to April 10th, the final day of the 2023 Legislative General Assembly session. And time is ticking for City State's Attorney Ivan Bates' bill to become reality. The legislation seeks to raise the maximum penalty from 3 years to 5 for first-time misdemeanor gun possession offenses.
When I talk about this bill, I think about a couple of things.
Heard one time in the House Judiciary Committee,
the judges They don't always have to give it. We don't always have to ask for it, but it is there. It is there.
But that's it. Bates asking committee chair Delegate Luke Clippinger of Baltimore City to hold a vote. So far, that hasn't happened. What's the delay in this piece of legislation moving forward?
There are a large number of issues that we've had to deal with in the committee this year. We'll know more later this week, by probably Thursday at the very latest.
Across the hall, the Senate version, sponsored by Baltimore City Democrat Corey McCray, coming out of the Rules Committee Tuesday after more stalling. Can you explain the month gap or what took so long to get it from out of the Rules Committee? I mean, today's March 14th.
At the end of the day, it's upon leadership which bills they do let out. I can make the request. I made the request, I believe, on March 7th.
Now sent to the Senate Judiciary Proceedings Committee. Despite a hearing not yet scheduled for the plan, Senate President Bill Ferguson confident in the path for the concept of the bill, not necessarily the bill itself.
I feel very confident that the issue itself, whether or not it's that specific bill, but the issue itself will get a vote this year in the Senate.
Does that mean the language could potentially be attached to another piece of legislation?
It could be. We'll just have to see sort of as things move forward.
Bates says the plan sends a message to criminals that a crackdown on violent crime is coming. But critics disagree, sparking op-eds and articles citing concerns about the gun penalties in the bill triggering mass incarceration. Something Bates says is simply incorrect.
Why is anyone pushing back to make something uniformed? I don't understand. But, there are a number of individuals, the academic, the scholars, so to speak, they're the ones who say it's mass incarceration. I think they're very confused about what mass incarceration is.
According to FOX45's analysis using Baltimore City data from 2022, there were more than 26,000 total crimes in the city. 12,394 arrests were made in a city with 576,498 people. 578 of those crimes were non-fatal shootings. Baltimore's police clearance rate for non-fatals, 23.3%. That data means more than half the crimes committed in the city did not result in arrest, or roughly 132 people were charged. While lawmakers look through the bill's concept, it will soon be a mad dash to the end to get everything to Governor Wes Moore before the clock strikes midnight on the final day of session. Now, Monday is crossover day. That's the self-imposed deadline to get legislation heard in the opposite chamber than what it was introduced. If the legislation makes it during the crossover, there's a higher chance that it could make it through the entire way. However, if it doesn't guarantee the legislation is dead. Really, it's up to the legislative leadership to decide what will move forward. And if this bill does make it through, we'll keep track of what happens as we get a little closer to the end of session. We're in the State House. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Maryland Senate Republicans are pushing the Violent Firearm Offenders Act, which would increase fines and prison time for gun offenders. There was a hearing on that bill today, but it didn't advance past committee. Fox 45 News continues to press lawmakers about that bill.
Unfortunately, in Annapolis, we have a lot of politicians who are soft on crime and actually want to go the other way and say that anyone under 25 shouldn't be charged with a crime.
I think we're having conversations across both chambers about what might be feasible. There's a lot more work that has to go to make sure that we have real safe communities.
Delegate Kathy Szeliga called some of her colleagues soft on crime. Some experts share that opinion, saying it's impacting the quality of life in Baltimore. And tonight we're looking at other cities with a rise in violent crime and the similar impact their policies may have had. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker continues our team coverage.
The Violent Firearms Offenders Act is back on the table for another year in Annapolis.
The soft on crime policies that have been passed in Annapolis over the last few years have resulted in hundreds and hundreds of deaths of innocent people.
The bill Governor Larry Hogan pushed for years but failed to pass targets repeat offenders. Republican lawmakers like Kathy Szeliga say it makes perfect sense.
Unfortunately, in Annapolis, we have a lot of politicians who are soft on crime and actually want to go the other way and say that anyone under 25 shouldn't be charged with a crime.
But as calls grow louder for the legislature to get tough on crime, states such as Oregon and Washington are dealing with hearing a similar plea as crime spikes in their biggest cities. Portland, Oregon saw a record number of homicides last year, and rising theft is putting a strain on businesses, causing some to pack up and leave.
It's not getting any better anytime fast.
Walmart is leaving town, and while the retailer never gave a single reason, many point to crime. And in Seattle, Washington, violent crime reached a 15-year high last year. And theft is also a problem. In January, a Nike store that had been downtown since 1996 closed, and many suspect crime was to blame.
We have to ensure there's a level of accountability. If people get released or people aren't answering to anything, they're going to go back and do more crime.
In both states, not unlike Maryland, the legislatures have had opportunities to pass bills targeting violent crime and retail theft, but bills have been stagnant or failed. In Washington, a bill that would have amended the definition of theft and helped struggling retailers stalled in committee. Another bill that would have provided funding for recruitment of police also stalled, as did a bill to restore authority for police to engage in a vehicle pursuit with reasonable suspicion. And in Oregon, where a poll commissioned last year by the Oregonian found nearly 2/3 of voters believe the criminal justice system isn't tough enough, there are currently 2 bills to fight violent crime in committee.
Both of those cities have been much more of more progressive. And I think what's happened is that a lot of people, they want the pendulum to come back again. And they want more tougher law enforcement.
Political analyst John Deedy says in many states, a showdown between moderate and progressive Democrats are leading to stalled bills. He says it's been happening in Annapolis for years.
The problem is, on some of the more serious things, on guns, they seem to have taken a back seat on dealing with this.
And it could happen again this year if the Violent Firearms Offenders Act goes nowhere yet again. And if City State's Attorney Ivan Bates' bill stalls too.
If you end the legislative session with not doing anything on some of these measures, you're sending 2 totally different messages of one person who wants to fight crime and another group of people that doesn't want to do it at all. And that's not a good formula.
Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
That brings us to our question of the day. Do you think the soft on crime approach, as some call it, from Annapolis is right for Maryland? So far, 86% of those who voted say no. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
Fox 45 News is helping to make your voice heard. Scan the QR code right there on your screen. It takes you to our website where we have put together a list of names and phone numbers of your state senators and delegates, including Senate President Bill Ferguson and House Speaker Adrian Jones.
We're on weather alert as intense wind whips through the area. Parts of our area saw even small amounts of snow this morning on the bottom left of your screen. On the right side, New England. This storm system hit them hard. Some areas saw between 9 and 29 inches of snow. Let's go to Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers for the latest.
Yeah, not here, but we do have the wind, and that's been the case all up and down the East Coast. A wind advisory in effect. That continues through just after midnight tonight. This is why we remain under weather alert, and it's especially dangerous during the overnight hours when you really can't see what's going on ahead of you with a whole lot of lead time. So those winds at about 15 to 25, still some gusts up to about perhaps 30, 40 miles an hour. You could still have some debris in the roadways that you're dealing with. Now, notice overnight into early tomorrow, the back edge of those winds slowly carving out. Still going to be windy into tomorrow, but things improve from there on out. I'm going to let you know when my Weather Authority forecast.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10, some are questioning the size of the Baltimore City Council, especially when compared to other city councils across the nation. Look at the numbers and the changes some are calling for. A group of city residents with irregular recycling pickup taking their concerns to court, the legal action they're taking, and what comes next. A Baltimore father shot and killed in a robbery as the nation sees an uptick in shoplifting. Coming up at 10:30, we have team coverage of violence in Baltimore and across the country. In a city in crisis, as one city councilman calls to restructure the Board of Estimates, some are questioning whether it is time to restructure city council itself.
Fox 45's Jeff Abel compares our city council with other cities. He joins us live now with the results he's found. Jeff?
You know, Baltimore City has more people sitting on its city council here than any other city of its size. And now, with the city's shrinking population, there are questions whether the size of the council should shrink too. In a city where the population is shrinking,
I am off and I'm tired.
And city leaders are fighting, many taxpayers are watching.
The more people you have, the more chaos you're going to have. And it seems like that other cities are doing just fine with fewer city council members.
Community groups have long questioned whether the size of the city council is the right size for Baltimore City. Baltimore's council of 15 members is far larger than every other council in Maryland. Baltimore County has a greater population and half as many council members. Prince George's County has 9, so does Montgomery County. And when compared to other major cities, the size of Baltimore's council is still far larger. Los Angeles does have 15 council members, but its population is 6 times greater than Baltimore. Phoenix has 1.5 million residents and 8 people sitting on its council. But in Charlotte, North Carolina, population 879,000, there are 11 council members who operate on a budget of just less than $1 million. Baltimore's city council budget tops $9 million.
Because some cities are more efficient with their use of funds. When you have a large city council, there is more opportunity for more money to be spent.
On Monday, City Councilman Zeke Cohen called for a 6-member task force to probe whether the size of the city's Board of Estimates should be adjusted, whether it should be expanded, reduced, or abolished altogether.
If we want to change outcomes for our city, we need to change structures for our city.
Now, some taxpayers believe the structure of the city council should be reviewed too.
You have a failing education system. You have public safety issues. You have taxpayer issues. And this is a city council that includes a lot of members, and they are not fixing these problems. And that's what people should be concerned about.
Well, Baltimore City is also the only major city that elects its city council president instead of having the city council just simply appoint them. We're live at City Hall tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. Well, the City Council has held a few hearings that left many residents frustrated. In October, a City Council committee held an investigative hearing into the Safe Streets program. Council members were not able to get many answers about how the program spends taxpayer dollars. Instead, most of that meeting was spent pressing the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety Director Shantae Jackson about why council members were not told about the reorganization of that program. In July, the council held a hearing on squeegee kids. That meeting left more questions than answers as well. The council did not come up with a plan to address some of the violent incidents. In 2021, the council had a hearing into the Baltimore City public school system following an internal report showing ghost students and grade changing at Augusta Fells High School. Members did not talk about those problems and didn't mention the school by name. Instead, Councilman Zeke Cohen asked about soap in school bathrooms.
Curious how we're doing around stocking soap in all of our schools.
Well, we want to hear from you. Do you think the Baltimore City Council should be smaller? So far, 100% of voters say yes. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote. Click on the Pulse tab to weigh in.
City residents fed up with infrequent recycling pickup are taking action. We hear complaints they're taking to the courts.
I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington, where the big question is, was it a bailout? We'll have some answers coming up.
And we remain on weather alert tonight as we see still some strong winds and wind advisories out through just after midnight. And that's going to lead to some cold temperatures by tomorrow morning. Cold wind chills mainly going to be about 30 to 35 as they are now temperature wise. But look at those wind chills, could be in the teens in spots. So make sure you bundle up. I'll let you know we could warm back into the 60s around here. And if it comes with rain in my Weather Authority forecast.
The federal government's rescue of 2 banks has brought about finger pointing over what caused the collapse and concerns about what the modern day relationship between the federal government and banks will look like.
National correspondent Christine Frizzell has a look at whether this was a bailout.
An emergency rescue in a sea of unknowns, with what was for many a collective sigh of relief following the announcement the federal government would step in to help in response to the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and later Signature Bank.
There are many people who are living paycheck to paycheck, and if this was delayed any further, I can't imagine what the ramifications for a lot of those folks would be.
President Joe Biden insisting the action would boost trust in the banking system and was not a bailout.
No losses will be borne by the taxpayers. Instead, the money will come from the fees that banks pay into the Deposit Insurance Fund.
But some in Washington sounding alarm bells. Senator Josh Hawley vowing to introduce legislation to prevent banks from passing on new fees to customers. In a tweet insisting, no way Missouri customers are paying for a, quote, woke bailout. Others blaming Congress and former President Trump for weakening regulations on small to mid-sized banks, which in turn emboldened the CEOs.
They decided to load up on risk. And why? They loaded up on risk because it made their banks more profitable, and that meant it made them have higher salaries.
In this case, depositors were protected, while shareholders and executives were not. So it wasn't a bailout in the traditional sense. Still, concerns are running high that knowing these banks were saved will signal to others that their deposits as well will be protected and guaranteed by the federal government.
This is the first thing I talk to my students about, this idea of moral hazard, that because you behaved badly this first time and then someone comes to rescue you, then the likelihood of you behaving badly again just goes up that much higher.
Calls for a balanced approach remain of instilling trust in the system as a whole and not returning to a time of too big to fail or too small to survive. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzell.
A local tie to Silicon Valley Bank, former mayoral candidate of Baltimore, Mary Miller, chaired the company's audit committee. Miller was once the vice president of T. Rowe Price in Baltimore. She's part of a board appointed by the FDIC to explore potential buyers, manage debt, and restructure what's left of SVB's portfolio.
That brings us to our national question of the day. Do you think the federal government should bail out failing banks? Scan the QR code right there on your screen, which will take you to the poll.
We have an update on the manhunt for Larry Hogan's former aide, Roy McGrath, what we know about his wife after he failed to show up for his federal trial.
Shoplifting hitting record numbers across the country. I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington with what experts say might be exacerbating the problem.
We're following three big stories at 10:30.
Shoplifting is at record levels across the nation. Companies are finding new ways to catch the thieves, though. A look at what some say is making the problem worse.
A Baltimore family is mourning the loss of a father of 7. He was shot and killed in southeast Baltimore in a robbery. We'll tell you how he's being remembered.
A group of residents say they're frustrated with DPW and its rolled back recycling services. Now they are taking action.
We begin there. The group, made up of dozens of city residents, tells Fox 45 News they're prepared to take their concerns to court.
That's right. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor has more on the lawsuit they filed.
Yeah, when the city moved to bi-weekly recycling due to pandemic-related staffing shortages, at first, Baltimore City residents were understanding. But now, 3 years post-pandemic, many of them are saying enough is enough. On windy days like this, blue bins filled to the brim can quickly turn into trash tumbling up and down the streets.
It would blow all over my yard and the neighbor's yard.
Desmond Stinney says post-pandemic, he has twice the recycling.
So much is package delivery.
But with half the pickups,
I had to build a fence to contain it all, to hold it for that long and, not create a bunch of litter around the neighborhood.
After more than a year of rolled back recycling, Stinney is among more than 60 Baltimore City residents saying enough is enough. The grassroots group filing a petition in circuit court, pointing to Article 23, Sections 1 through 4 of the city charter, which requires the city to perform weekly recycling collections.
That frequency is codified in our city charter. And it's not an option for the mayor to be out of compliance, on that article.
Along with the constant overflow of cardboard boxes, Stinney says the city's recent $15 million investment in Clean Core, a community-based cleanup initiative, is what ultimately pushed him to file this petition.
I think it just proves how tone deaf the administration is on such a basic issue. When you look at the amount of money being spent, that money could easily be spent with a contractor to pick up our recycling every other week.
Clearly, there's no sense of urgency.
It's an argument Councilman Yitzi Schleifer has made time and time again. He says because residents are still paying for weekly recycling, the city should either comply with city code or compensate them for the lack of service.
Really, they owe the taxpayers a refund.
According to Stinney, this fence alone costing him
well over $3,000.
The city now has 30 days to respond to this pending litigation. I reached out to the mayor's office, to DPW, and to the city's law department for a comment on this issue, but as of News Time Tonight, have not heard back. In the meantime, if you agree recycling in the city should be restored to weekly pickups instead of bi-weekly, you can still put your signature on this petition. You can find a link to it in the story on our website at foxbaltimore.com. In Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Baltimore County is announcing yard trash collection will pick up on April 1st. It will be collected separately from regular recycling up through December 14th. Not all neighborhoods are eligible for yard waste pickup. You can find your schedule online at the Bureau of Solid Waste Management website.
We have an update right now. Federal agents are still looking for Governor Larry Hogan's former chief of staff, Roy McGrath, after he failed to show up for his federal trial yesterday. Now, we know McGrath's wife, Laura Bruner, is cooperating with law enforcement. McGrath's attorney says Bruner was spending time with friends yesterday and doesn't know where her husband is. There is now a wanted poster for him. Authorities tell Fox 45 News there's a multi-state, multi-agency investigation underway and the FBI is involved. McGrath was scheduled to fly from Florida to Baltimore Sunday night and meet his attorney at the courthouse Monday. There's a law enforcement presence now at his Florida home. McGrath is accused of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from the state while serving as the director of the quasi-state agency, the Maryland Environmental Service. He's also accused of illegally recording conversations with former Governor Hogan's staffers. If he's arrested, he'll be brought back to Baltimore. Fox 45 News will keep you updated on this story.
State's attorneys from across Maryland are pushing for 2 bills that would better protect children from abuse and sex trafficking. One of them, the Safe Harbor Bill, protects juvenile victims of human trafficking from being prosecuted for crimes they commit while they're being exploited.
We know that victims are not given a choice. They are forced, threatened, to participate in some unimaginable acts.
There's no other group of victims, especially child victims, who get prosecuted for the crime that's happening against them.
The other bill would allow prosecution of people outside of schools in positions of authority like music teachers and coaches who engage in relationships with 16 and 17-year-olds. The bill has stalled in the Senate in the past. It's not clear what will happen this year. There is opposition to the bills from both sides of the aisle. Critics feel children will exploit the laws to either commit crimes or hurt those in positions of authority.
Anne Arundel County Police make an arrest in an August 2022 homicide in Severn. Police say 18-year-old Vinay Lewis has been charged with the murder of Naeem Addison. Police say the victim was seated inside of a car when he was shot. They believe it was a targeted incident. Lewis was 17 at the time and faces 8 charges, including first and second degree murder and possessing a firearm as a minor.
As the nation deals with rising crime, Fox 45 News is taking a closer look at the numbers. Here in Baltimore, the number of homicides are down compared to last year. However, the numbers are on pace with 2021. You'll remember last January was one of the deadliest months in the city's history. Shoplifting, also a growing problem, hitting record levels nationwide. Here in Baltimore, police data shows commercial robberies are up 111% compared to this time last year. Well, Sinclair national correspondent Kayla Gaskin's looking into the growing problem with shoplifting across the nation. Our team coverage begins, though, with Alexa Ashwell in Baltimore City. She has the story of a father of 7 who died after police say he was shot during a robbery in southeast Baltimore.
Javier Lopez Ortiz, described by family as a 39-year-old hardworking and loving father of 7, gone, lost to violence. His life, police confirm, taken in an apparent robbery here in southeast Baltimore. The family detailing Javier had gone to shoot pool at a restaurant near the corner of Pratt and Haven Streets in the Baltimore Highlands Friday night. When outside, an unknown suspect robbed and then shot him in the face. Javier was rushed to an area hospital where he was placed on life support. The father of 7 tragically dying days later. Javier's family sharing these pictures, describing him as a plumber by trade with a passion for his children. Javier's sister sharing his organ donation coin and writing, "Your heart will continue to live, little brother. You will give life to someone else. I will love you all my life." A mother to his children also writing in part, "This is not fair. How could this happen? How is it okay for these children to grow up without their father?" Baltimore police not yet releasing any additional detail, including exactly how the robbery occurred, what was taken, and where the department stands in its search for the killer. Meanwhile, family and the community starting this GoFundMe as they now prepare to lay Javier to rest, a father falling victim to the violence and his children forever impacted. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
President Joe Biden issues an executive order today to crack down on gun violence. He traveled to Monterey Park, California, to lay out the details of that plan. Now, that community is still reeling from a mass shooting in January. A gunman killed 11 people during a Lunar New Year celebration. The executive actions right now are aimed at increasing background checks and promoting more secure firearm storage by directing federal agencies to ensure compliance.
But let's be clear. None of this absolves Congress the responsibility from the responsibility of acting to pass universal background checks, eliminate gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. And I'm determined, once again, to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines.
Now, the slate of new orders is largely symbolic. The administration doesn't have the power to enact significant measures without the approval of Congress. The president pleaded with Republicans right now to work with Democrats to put an end to this kind of violence.
Well, shoplifting hitting record levels nationwide, and companies and politicians are shifting their approach to catching thieves. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins continues our team coverage.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams has a new request for those shopping within city limits. Lower your mask when entering a store.
We've gotten so used to the mask that we don't realize there's a large volume of people that are wearing it, not because of COVID, because they're criminals.
Robbery rates remain stubbornly high nationwide. In New York, they're up more than 40% over the past 2 years. Retailers also experiencing a 26.5% annual increase in the number of thefts committed by organized groups in 2021. That's according to the National Retail Federation. Walmart planning to close 8 stores nationwide, citing poor performance. And while the retail giant hasn't directly blamed theft, back in December, CEO Doug McMillon warned closures would happen if crime didn't improve.
Theft is an issue. It's higher than what it's historically been. If that's not corrected over time, prices will be higher and/or stores will close.
Conservatives arguing Democratic-led state and local governments have emboldened criminals by failing to enact tough-on-crime policies. Others point out the staffing crisis hitting police departments is making matters worse.
NYPD so far this year losing staff at the highest rate in 2 decades. In Washington, D.C., police officials say their department hasn't been this small in 50 years.
When you see the dramatic decline in staffing in New York City, difficulties with recruiting, and increases in crime, I think they all that pattern comes together and is very noticeable and observable, and it really tells us that it is that the staffing crisis is making a strong and negative impact.
The trends in these big cities, a possible canary in a coal mine, showing what lies ahead for smaller communities. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Taking a look right now at the Fox box on the top left, a private Christian school in Vermont is banned from all upcoming state sporting events after it withdrew from a girls' basketball tournament because it refused to compete against a team with a transgender athlete. The school says it plans to appeal the decision.
Top right, San Francisco is set to consider a reparations package that would pay $5 million to eligible black residents. It's not clear where the funding would come from.
In the bottom left, Silicon Valley Bank posted a job listing for a financial crimes position days before it closed. The listing sought a senior manager to lead a team in the bank's risk department to perform, quote, enhanced due diligence reviews.
Bottom right, Louisville police and the Kentucky Inspector General have reached an agreement to increase accountability for officers in the city. It comes after a DOJ probe found the police there engaged in a pattern of violating citizens' constitutional rights for years.
Be the first to know about breaking news by signing up for News on the Go. Go to foxbaltimore.com and click on Mobile Alert Sign Up under the Station tab. You can also download the Fox 45 app for your smartphone. Search for WBFF in your app store.
A roadblock to the American dream. Why so many people are having such a hard time buying a home, even people making 6 figures. And a building collapses tonight in West Baltimore. What neighbors say led to this.
And our latest weather maker keeping us under weather alert. We've still got the winds. We've still got some snow to our north. I'm going to let you know how long it's going to last and if you're going to wake up to more damaging winds tomorrow in my Weather Authority forecast.